So, a couple days ago, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution, Resolution 2797, that said the most feasible solution for the Western Sahara geopolitical issue was genuine autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty. And this was huge for Morocco. It was huge for a couple of reasons, but mainly because this is the first time that the UN Security Council has explicitly endorsed Morocco's autonomy plan, the plan that was proposed by Morocco in 2007, that would allow Western Sahara to self-govern under Moroccan rule. And it's a very, very stark contrast to the UN's typically neutral rhetoric that takes and champions both sides of the conflict equally. It was, in a lot of ways, a confirmation of something that Moroccans have known for decades, which is that the Western Sahara isn't just a territory to the south of Morocco. It is the south of Morocco. So, in celebration and for the sake of historical acknowledgement, I'm going to go over the historical context of everything leading up to this moment, how we got here, why all of this is so important, and about what comes next. So let's talk about the Western Moroccan Sahara. When European powers carved up North Africa in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they drew their borders with very little regard for the people living there. Spain grabbed Western Sahara, at that point, which was called Spanish Sahara, and ruled it as a colony until 1975. France established protectorates over Morocco and governed Algeria. And when Morocco gained independence in 1956, it found itself incomplete. It found its lands truncated. Spain still held parts of its south, and the French-made borders left the resource-rich areas on the Algerian side. And this would be the primary reason for the setting of the stage for a rivalry between Morocco and Algeria that still defines the two countries to this day. And the two countries even fought a brief border war in 1963 called the Sand War, which left very deep scars in their relationship. Now, on the subject of the Moroccan Western Sahara conflict itself, by the early 1970s, pressure was mounting on Spain to decolonize the region. The world was moving towards a outlook that was very unfavorable towards imperialism, and essentially decolonization was in. It was the progressive move. Morocco's king, Hassan Thani, had other plans. In November 1975, as Spain was having domestic issues and its dictator was dying, Hassan mobilized 350,000 unarmed Moroccan volunteers to march into Spanish Sahara, waving flags and Qurans, and this would be known as the famous Green March. This massive, peaceful invasion put Spain in a very impossible position, and so behind the scenes, Spain ended up striking a deal, partitioning Western Sahara between Morocco and Mauritania. But this would trigger a full-blown war. The Polisario front, now based in Algeria and heavily armed by Algeria, rejected the deal and proclaimed the independent Arab Democratic Republic in 1976. Mauritania would go on to withdraw in 1979, but Morocco vowed never to give up the territory. And so it became a grueling desert war, Morocco versus Polisario, backed by Algeria. So Morocco would go on to build a massive 1,500-kilometer fortified sand wall across the desert in the 1980s, and it would seal off about 80% of the territory, including all major towns, roads, and resources. And so by the late 1980s, it was essentially a frozen conflict. And in 1991, the UN finally decided to broker a ceasefire with a very distinct promise that there would be a referendum, a vote, where Sahrawis could choose between independence or integration with Morocco. And of course, this is where the UN established the peacekeeping mission MINURSO to prepare for this vote. The vote never actually happened, and so years would turn into decades as Morocco and Polisario fought over who could vote, who was considered the right person to be able to vote. And by the late 1990s, Morocco, very firmly in control and on the ground, began openly backtracking on the idea of an independent vote. And so various UN plans tried to break the deadlock, but nothing would end up working. So the Moroccan Western Sahara became known as Africa's last colony, so stuck in diplomatic limbo. And facing this dead end, Morocco would change its course. In 2007, King Mohammed put forward an autonomy plan, which is the plan that says that the Moroccan Western Sahara would become an autonomous region, self-govern, have their own schools, their own governance, as long as it was within the sovereignty of Morocco. Sahrawis would elect their own parliament, would run their own local affairs. But of course, Morocco would handle defense policy and things like that. Essentially self-rule under the Moroccan flag. Polisario rejected it outright. Still very strongly demanding the vote, a referendum, with independence as the option. And it was just a back and forth. But Morocco's calculation was that the world might accept this middle ground given the failure of all or nothing approaches. And gradually, that's exactly what happened. Over the next decade plus, international attitudes would evolve completely. By the mid-2010s, many observers saw that a referendum had become impossible. Morocco definitely would not permit a vote, and really no one could force their hand. The conversation would go to shift to finding a realistic solution, and Morocco's autonomy plan started gaining that traction. In March 2022, Spain, the former colonial power, called Moroccan autonomy the most serious, realistic, and credible basis for resolving the conflict. And given Spain's historical weight on the issue, its endorsement, of course, was huge. France, the UK, Germany, and others followed. By 2025, France, Spain, the UK, the US, and most of the EU were backing Morocco's position, alongside a growing number of African and Arab allies. Algeria remained the staunch patron of Polisario, but of course continuously would find itself more and more isolated. Many analysts also would believe that Algeria's support was much more about checking Morocco's regional power than it was about anti-colonial principles that it boasted. In any case, all of this brings us to October 2025. Each year, the UN Security Council votes to renew the peacekeeping mission MINURSO, and typically these resolutions very carefully avoid taking sides. Not this time. The October 2025 resolution explicitly stated that genuine autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty very well could constitute the most feasible solution to the conflict, and it was the first time that the Council had openly endorsed Morocco's preferred outcome of the autonomy as final solution. The word independence didn't even appear in the text at all, which was also incredible. 11 of the 15 council members voted in favor, including US, France, the UK, Russia and China and Pakistan abstained. But notably, no one vetoed it. Algeria recused itself in protest. And for Morocco, this was a long-awaited diplomatic prize. King Mohammed VI said that Morocco was starting a new chapter in consolidating the Moroccan-ness of the Sahara. In cities across Morocco, crowds celebrated late into the night. Polisario blasted the resolution as a sellout, correctly noting that it doesn't explicitly recognize Morocco's sovereignty. It just endorses autonomy as a solution, but the diplomatic wind was very, very clearly blowing in Morocco's way. So, why does this all matter? For decades, the dominant framing was that Western Sahara was a decolonization case. Spain left, so people should vote on independence. And the Polisario styled itself as a national liberation movement, which many African and international bodies endorsed. Of course, Morocco always rejected this narrative. To Moroccans, this was about national unity and historical rights. Moroccan sultans had ties with Saharan tribes for centuries. When the Green March drove Spain out in 1975, they saw it as reunification with the homeland, not as an occupation of territory. Even the very term Western Sahara isn't used in Morocco. It's the Moroccan Sahara. And so what the 2025 UN resolution did was tilt the narrative decisively toward Morocco's framing. The council didn't talk about decolonization or independence referendums at all. The Moroccan Western Sahara is called the first cause in Morocco, a non-negotiable national issue that transcends politics. And Morocco played a long game of diplomatic chess, re-entering the African Union in 2017, forging new alliances, leveraging economic investments, and portraying their autonomy plan as the only solution against regional chaos. So, where does this leave us? Symbolically and diplomatically, Moroccan sees the decades-old question approaching its endgame. After very well half a century of struggle, Morocco's argument that autonomy within its sovereignty is the only basis for peace now carries the UN Security Council stamp of approval, which is just an absolute win. It is the closure of a colonial chapter that began well over a century ago.
His Majesty King Mohammed VI was able to reclaim the land of his ancestors, while the Algerian regime now faces a potential ticking time bomb. Polisario, which it hosted during the conflict, very likely will feel a strong claim to the Algerian territory it occupies. Allah al-Watan al-Malik. Thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum.